This was a post that was on Reddit 2 years ago, and it was probably one of my favorite posts I've ever seen anyone make on the Celtic subreddit from this guy named Chris Mills Contract. It got very little attention, maybe 15 upvotes, but he brought up this idea that I really liked, where he's saying that the way we look at prospects and think about their ceilings kind of needs a modifier. So he basically put it up like this. He's like, let's consider that there's 10 levels of players. There's someone who can potentially become a generational talent. That's like the guys that are amazing, like LeBron, Larry Bird, Michael Jordan, like the once in a generation type of talent. There's the next step down, which is the elite talent. And those are guys that will end up being MVP candidates. Guys like Kevin Garnett, guys like James Harden, Dirk Nowitzki, for example. Then the step below that, perennial all-stars. That's guys like Pierce, Gary Payton, guys who don't necessarily end up being an all-NBA first teamer, but end up being great. So he had this whole kind of list of, it's going to be confusing, but 10 tiers: generational talent, elite talent, perennial all-star, all-star, fringe star. And he says when you look at a prospect, you kind of look at what their ceiling might be, but you need a modifier. And this is the part that I thought was great. And the modifier is a little bit further. If you scroll down, he's like, an A, which is that he's all but guaranteed to reach that potential, 100% likeliness, which is super unlikely, right? B, right, he should reach that potential, but he could drop a tier. You know, maybe you think that he's got elite talent potential, but it's a possibility he's only going to end up being a perennial all-star. C, he may reach that potential, but could drop 2 tiers. You know, he's shown some flashes, but ultimately is not likely to reach that potential. And then D, unlikely to reach that potential, could drop 3 tiers. So I love this because if you think about a guy like Gerald Green, who when he came out, people were like, you know, best case scenario, because of the fact he can jump and shoot, maybe he ends up being an all-star. But I would say the modifier on that is that D, he's unlikely to reach that potential. You know, he's probably going to drop from all-star to a solid starter at best, or maybe even a rotation player. I like that a lot because if I look at our roster right now, and people talk about how Jaylen Brown has amazing potential, and they talk about how Jason Tatum has amazing potential, I think you need that modifier. So I would say that right now, personally, and I want to hear what you have to say about it, but personally, I would say that Jason Tatum, I have such huge hopes for this kid. I think he's just like physically, his length, his size, his shooting ability, his moves. I think he'd put his ceiling at probably an elite talent level, MVP candidate someday. But I don't think that it's a guarantee, right? So I would say the modifier on him is probably going to be a B. I think he should reach that potential. I really do, but it's most likely he's going to end up being a perennial all-star. You could talk me into it being a C. He's could drop all the way to all-star. When I look at Jaylen Brown, I would say that best case scenario, he's probably an all-star. Probably an all-star. I think level 4. But I don't know how likely it is. I think it could be a C. It could drop a couple tiers. It could go down to just being a plus starter. So how would you rank some of our young guys on that scale?
Well, if you think about Brown, I mean, the issue I have with Brown is his overall feel. Unless he's scoring the ball, shooting the ball within the flow of the offense, obviously he's playing great, you know, for the most part. He's engaged. But if he's not, if he's a corner shooter and he's relegated to like playing off the ball, his entire game seems to suffer. Like defensively, he loves going for fakes. I hate. If you think about it on paper, he should be like the perfect guy to like cover Redick, but he's not. He gets lost on screens, and Redick will pump fake him, and you know it's a disaster. But then you have somebody like Joe Ingles who took Redick out a couple of years ago in the playoffs, right? Because it's just the intelligence, the IQ. Think I want Brown to develop. I do think his handles have gotten better. Before he was pretty atrocious. As for Tatum, yeah, I agree with you. He's got all the tools. My issue right now with Tatum is that there's a lot less catch and shoots. If you notice, he's putting the ball down a lot, that pump fake, and then he's always going left. Pump fake left. Like there's no pump fake right, or there's really few catch and shoot. So I want to see him like start developing and mixing up aspects of his game. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've caught that, but it's always like that pump fake going to the left.
It definitely seems like he's experimenting a little bit and trying different things, but yeah, there's aspects he definitely needs to improve. So you kind of agree with me that Tatum probably elite talent level, but maybe like a B modifier. He could drop a tier. And for your best case scenario, you're seeing Brown as, you still think he has potential to be an all-star?
I do, because he's got all the physical tools.
And then like, how likely do you think that is? Like, what would you put the modifier as? Would you say that's a C, he could drop 2 tiers, unlikely, not worth. You know, where would you put that?
I don't think he'd be an all-star on our team.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, I think there's too many mouths to feed. But if he goes to a team that he's like a focal point of the offense, for sure, I think he has all-star potential, and the likelihood increases tremendously. Just like Rozier. Rozier's a player with a lot of talent. He just cannot play limited minutes. That's just not suited for him.
Yep, I agree with you there too. I think that Rozier, I would probably put his ceiling, it's like best case scenario is a fringe all-star, probably a level 5 on this scale. And then I would say that probably a C modifier. It could end up that he just ends up being a solid starter.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah. Yeah, he needs minutes. He's not a guy that's going to like do well playing limited minutes. He's not. He needs to establish a rhythm, and he forces a lot of shots when he's playing limited minutes because he feels that he needs to like get things going. So, yeah, he's pretty frustrating playing limited minutes. As a starter, as a spot starter, you love him, but off the bench, he drives me nuts.